Hi, and welcome to the School Health Educators Podcast, where we discuss health education and how to best teach health ed in the K 12 setting. Hi, folks, and welcome to the School Health Educators Podcast. I'm your host, Lori Reichel. And if you're in the States, it's summertime, and I hope that you're having a cool summer after a very long winter that we've had in New York. I say that. But wherever you are in the world, I really do hope that you're doing well. And wanted to do this short episode because if you're looking for a little inspiration as a school health educator, I would like to go over the episodes that were released as of this past year of 2026. So I'm going to do a brief description for each of those episodes because there are superstars who have been guests on this podcast. And I'm so proud to say that this podcast has had people listen to episodes in almost every country. Almost. So I'm really proud of that. More importantly, I'm hoping that this helps you in the field of taking care of children and youth. So hopefully this has been really helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen of where the podcast episodes can be found on the schoolhealtheducators.org website, although the podcast is also found on any podcast platform. So, and YouTube, it's also found on the YouTube, yoo-hoo! So let me share my screen in which I'm going to show you the most recent episode, and I'm going to go in that order all the way to the beginning of 2026. So the most recent has been titled Body, Mind, Spirit Healing of the Nervous System with Dr. Paula Umel. She is a returning guest in which she basically went over some ideas of how we as educators can decompress when we have downtime. So like I said, for some of us in the United States, it's summertime, and that means that we don't have school for summer. So she has really great ideas. And so that's the most recent that was released on July 7th. Before that was the 2026 HPE Summer Book Club recommendations with Andy Milne. A lot of us know Andy, and he went over his top choices of what to read over the summer. And in this episode, he talks about what each of his top 5, I believe it was, recommendations are for this time of year, July, August 2026. And that was released on June 23rd. June 9th's episode included Nicole Sheffer, who was Shape America's Southern District Teacher of the Year. Go, Nicole. And the title of that episode was Ideas for How to Recharge Over the Summer Months. So in addition to Paula's episode, we also had Nicole going over some ideas. And what's interesting is Paula, her episode went over some of those natural ways to reset our parasympathetic nervous system. And Nicole's episode goes over how she recharges by professional development. I think that's really cool. So it's 2 different sets of ideas by 2 different guests. The May 26th episode included Drew Miller, who was the 2026 Shape Eastern Division Health Educator of the Year. And he talked about how to ensure we have a comfortable environment in health education classes. So he did a really fine job of how he connects with students. And it's really neat. I get to see him at the New York State Conference that we have in Verona, New York, at the Turning Stone in November. So I'll get to see him. On May 12th, Dr. Sue Milstein was the guest, and she talked about, well, her title for the episode was Not Your Mama's Sex Ed. And basically, she went over helpful reminders of how to stay current on the topic of human sexuality. On April 28th, I did a solo episode with functional health knowledge reminders for puberty lessons. If you know me, you know that I used to have the Puberty Prof podcast, and I also wrote the book, Common Questions Children Ask About Puberty, which is over 500 questions that children have asked me or some of my friends slash peers when we teach about puberty. And there are simple age developmentally appropriate answers provided in that book. So in that episode, I went over some reminders for us as educators. Now on April 7th, that episode included guest Lauren Baranow. Hopefully I'm saying it correct, one of those. She is the person behind Talk More, and there's a link in that episode's description to contact her. She also does a lot of work with advocates for youth, and she talked about how we need to talk more. In other words, instead of having, like if I go back to puberty, instead of having a puberty talk, quote unquote, that some schools do, we need to have talks. And I totally support that. That's why I created the Talk Puberty app as well as the discussion cards for puberty talks. So thank you, Lauren. On March 9th, I released a solo episode on my experiences at I want to make sure I say this correctly, at the National Academy for Health and Physical Literacy Summit. We had a conference. It was down in Orlando. Next year is Kansas City. I was honored to receive the National Health Literacy Award, and I talked about my experience. It was different from other conferences. I felt more casual, yet professional. So consider listening in on that March 24th episode. Then on March 10th, I had the Shape America's 2025 Health Education Teacher of the Year, Sandy Ortiz. She talked about her health education journey, and I'm super excited that she has said yes to presenting at New York State's AFERD conference in November. So if you're in the eastern area of the states, see if you can come to the New York State AFERD conference. And feel free to reach out to me if you ever want more information on that, or check the New York State AFERD website. So that was Sandy, so much energy with Sandy. And then February 24th, I had the guest of Dr. Donna Volpita. Now, I kind of like relax when I start talking about this conversation with Donna, because it just made me smarter. Like all of these people on the podcast make me a better person. This one really, my brain enjoyed talking to Donna because it was about applied neuroscience for building resiliency, something I totally believe we need to be doing with young people. And she talks about the resilient mindset model, and she's the person behind Pathways to Empower. On February 10th, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jess Lawrence, and she talked about walking the talk and about how we as educators, where we have our positions, but we're also people, and how it's so much smoother to teach in our field when we actually practice what we teach. So that was with Jess. So much fun. So much fun. All these great people I've spoken with. On January 27th, I did a solo episode because I wanted to share the activity I've used for identifying emotional health and mental health. And if you ask my students that I train for future teaching health education, I train future health educators. If you ask them what one of my pet peeves is, it is that people continuously misuse the term mental health for emotional health. So in this episode, I go over the difference because emotions are really, it's that skill set of people identifying their emotions. Like if you ask somebody, how do you feel? So many people will answer by saying, I feel that. And then they talk about their thoughts. But emotional health is about really recognizing your feelings, like I feel sad, I feel inspired. So that's why I provided January 27th episode. And then January 13th, that was the first time Dr. Paula Umel was on the episode, and she talked about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, if you see all those like new, they're not toys, they're new devices. Sometimes it comes up on a YouTube feed or other social media feed. those, nothing against those, sorry folks, but she's talking about like how we can do this naturally. And so that was titled The Vagus Nerve Explained with Dr. Paula Umel. And the last one I want to talk about here is what I released on December 30th, 2025, because I provided the wellness planning worksheet to start 2026, because I always think it's a great idea to look at what you're hoping to be and accomplish. And that's something my partner and I do. Every January 1st, we sit down and we share where we've been and what we're hoping to what we're hoping to be and do that following year or that current year. So I thank you for listening in. Again, this is an overview of the episodes that were released basically in 2026 before this date. And a little side note, I'm really proud to say that I've had a lot of former students tell me this podcast is actually helping them for understanding some concepts of health education more. And that includes as they listen as going for job interviews or after job interviews, which I'm glad they're listening in. If you're one of those people, I miss you, I miss seeing you, and I hope you the best in your career. But for all of us here, thank you for listening in. Continue to give some 5 stars, listen in, follow the podcast, check out the School Health Educators website, and last but not least, continue doing what you're doing. Take care of yourself, but continue to take care of yourself to help continue taking care of children and youth. They need us, they need you. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Stay well.